start. We're discussing occult conversations, but we're discussing, there's the articles 1 and 2 occult conversations that Judge had with HPB, but then there's also a lot of, like, he talks about occult teachings. He talks, last week we talked about occult vibrations. The first week, even before we started talking about this, Justin brought up the idea about elementals, which we can get into more detail today if we want. I'm just going to point out a couple things, and then we can discuss what people feel like they want to discuss out of these different articles. But I'm going to start with a short reading out of the Voice of the Silence, because to me the voice of the silence is explaining in a little different way occultism. On one hand, it's like a manual on meditation and states of consciousness, but at the same time it's talking about the occult nature that we all participate in, but not awares on all the planes that we participate in. So this section's on page 15, and I'm only going to read a couple paragraphs of it or verses of it. And it has to do with, there was also an article in the judge's articles on occultism that talks about laws of occultism. He covers a few, but this voice reading will get us started. And it says, help nature and work on with her, and nature will regard thee as one of her creators and make obeisance. And she will open wide before thee the portals of her secret chambers, lay bare before thy gaze the treasures hidden in the very depths of her pure virgin bosom. Unsullied by the hand of matter, she shows her treasures only to the eye of spirit, the eye which never closes, the eye for which there is no veil in all her kingdoms. Then she will show ye the means and the way, the first gate and the second, third, up to the very seventh, and then the goal, beyond which lie, bathed in the sunlight of spirit, glories untold, unseen by any, save the eye of soul. So when people are questioning or wanting to know about occultism, what occultism is, here in the voice, she's explaining that nature has its own laws guarding the kingdom of the occult world, or the planes, or the states of occult consciousness. And if you are in harmony with those laws, then it will naturally unfold within your own nature. Some people kind of pursue occultism and they think of, well, if I study all the things that Paracelsus wrote about, and I try and study everything that Eliphas Levi wrote, and I read some Theosophy, and I learn all the different rules and the terms and what planes are on there, then I'll be able to access these planes. I'll be able to get to see the hidden side of nature, and then get to work on that side to produce results on this side. And it's saying here that that's part of the process, but a more important part of the process is attuning yourself to those natural laws. And so there's no police per se on that plane. There's adepts on that plane, but even the adepts say that we don't work as police. What we do is, if someone is able to kind of tap into part of nature and get kind of clues to how things work, but their inner nature is of a selfish nature, we don't really, we can't really stop them by karma. What we can do is distract them and lead them down a different path. And so I think it's interesting to think of it from that perspective, that there's laws within nature that work as its own police and guardian. The adepts have their purpose in the whole plan of everything, but they say their purpose isn't policing. Their purpose is trying to work with nature as ever much they can within karma, help humanity enlighten to the point where they're not doing so much damage, and work from that perspective. So someone that might not even be so aware or pursuing occultism, but they're trying to develop a cure for, say, a particular kind of cancer. Now, they've trained through school, through their studies, through researching, they've trained their mind to work in a particular direction. So they're working on this problem of humanity, which cancer's been with us probably longer than we know. But their motive to try and help people opens them up naturally to certain planes of thought that other people are trying to do that. But if someone is really has like a non-selfish motive in it, then the adepts can work with them and they can kind of help plant seeds into their mind, or they can give them insights. And I think that's an aspect of occultism that a lot of people don't really think about or kind of take for granted. Because we could say that we know historically that when inventions happen, they don't just happen usually in one tiny spot. Inventions happen in a couple places in the globe, even before we had internet or communication. So that means there's a plane of mind that everyone is connected to, and under certain circumstances, you get guidance. Some people might say, well, that's just really hard work and determination of pursuing, their science, which it could be. But also there's very unusual things, like even, way back when they first put the Hubble telescope up into space, it went up in a space shuttle, which is now parked here. It's like a museum attraction. It went up in a space shuttle. They spent years developing the mirror that's going to work in the telescope. Got up, they started getting images, and the images were distorted. The mirror that they thought was perfect wasn't perfect. So then the engineers and scientists that developed it were trying to solve the problem. And they were coming at it from different angles, and no one could really figure out how we're going to fix it. It's already built. First off, we're going to have to send astronauts up there.
Okay. What's your name?
Azaria?
Azaria? Oh, yeah, I'd say,
Yeah, I was
good to meet you.
debating you.
Yeah.
Social feedback.
Oh, no, they're cool. It's LA, man. So glad when they can get there. It's not easy getting there sometimes.
You would be kind.
Yeah. So the one scientist, is working on the problem. And then in a dream, he has this crazy dream, he says, but he's in the shower and there's a mirror attached to the shower head. So he wakes up in the morning and he's like, man, that's a weird dream. I mean, why am I dreaming about it? He goes, I know, I've been thinking about mirrors and, trying to solve the problem. And then it dawned on him that they can make a little tiny extra mirror that they attach to the edge that will reflect back and correct the distortion. Kind of like if we're wearing glasses.
Mm-hmm.
But it came to him in a dream. But it could have come to me and it would just be a dream. It'd be another weird dream that I had. But coming to the right person, then that idea can be used to solve a problem. So that's an aspect of occultism that probably happens a lot more often than we think. We just don't realize it. You know, someone makes a scientific discovery, someone discovers a cure, a surgeon figures out a better way to do an operation. All those are because the person is in that field and they're highly trained. But also the idea to do that, make that change, has to come from somewhere.
So are you basically, not just, but basically kind of saying that to be a practitioner of the occult science, magic even, you have to position yourself where that inspiration, where that stuff will mean something. You have to train with what prepare yourself so that when that kind of inspiration comes, it makes sense. Because yeah, like what you're saying, like without his preparation of years of study and mathematical know-how, a dream means nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
But on a different level, every person, no matter what you do, is playing an integral role in society. Even if you're someone that nobody really knows, you have an association of friends and you have family and you have interactions with people all the time. And sometimes you might just get a prompting of like, it's as basic as someone that you work with someone, their car breaks down. Now you could give them a ride, but it's going to take an hour and a half out of your day. So you can give them a ride or you don't have to give them a ride. And I'm not saying there's a right answer, but there's things that people call synchronicity, or there's an idea that things just happen. Well, some things just happen, but also there's promptings that people don't pay attention to. They think, oh, that's a stupid idea. Or, maybe you're interviewing for a job and you have 3 interviews and 2 of the jobs logically make sense. You can write on the paper all the pluses and all the cons to that job. But something is telling you that you should take the 3rd job, even though logically the other 2 are probably better opportunities. You either take it or you don't. And I think that's kind of on a personal level, that's one way that occultism, or you could say without being guidance by a master, it could be your own inner nature, your own soul wisdom that is guiding you, but all as it can tell you, it can't tell you the whys of it. It can just tell you, you should go this way, or you shouldn't do that. Even as a little kid, it doesn't matter what culture you grow up in, there's certain things as a kid that say you shouldn't do that. And then your culture might say, oh no, that's okay to do. But if you follow your inner nature, then I think that gets more in line with the voice is talking about. About working with nature, and nature will work with you.
I think that makes it really reiterates why it's so important to have like lineages of teachings and things like that, because I mean, oral transmission and oral transmission is awesome. It's really important, but it's hard to maintain the whys over 100 years of oral transmission. It's usually just the big points, So yeah, I think that's interesting.
I'm going to read something else out of this, one of these articles, and it's in an article called Occult Teaching.
Oh, that's in number 2. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Let me see.
But it's in this book, it's on page 427, but it's right in the first article. Hey, Chris, welcome.
Hey.
So here the question is, what is occultism? And the answer is, it is that branch of knowledge which shows the universe in the form of an egg. The cell of science is a little copy of the egg of the universe. The laws which govern the whole govern also every part of it. As a man is a little copy of the universe, is the microcosm, he is governed by the same laws which rule the greater. Occultism teaches, therefore, of the secret laws and forces of the universe and man, those forces playing in the outer world and known in part only by the men of the day, who admit no invisible real nature behind which is the model of the visible. What does occultism teach in regard to man, broadly speaking? And their answer is that he is the highest product of evolution and hence has in him a center of force or focus corresponding to each center of force or power in the universe. He therefore has as many centers or foci for forces, powers, and knowledge as there are such in the greater world about and within him. And so here they're trying to make aware, like last week we talked about the 7 planes of consciousness and the 7 planes of matter. And why that's important is because we are connected to all those planes. And our consciousness is connected to the other consciousnesses. The only difference is how much we're aware of it. Like I'm aware of everyone in the room here, I'm not aware of what you think about anything in the world. And as I get to know you more and more and more, I have assumptions about how I think you think. But that's different from how you actually think. And there's a plane of mind that we all operate on where it's different from me supposing how you think. I can actually know and feel how you think and feel. But the problem is, when we tap into that, what are we doing with that knowledge? And how useful is it? And how detrimental is it to the other person? That's why very few people can tap into that plane. We might be able to get small glimpses if we have some kind of natural psychic ability. But as I started talking about at the beginning of the class, there's natural laws that prevent people from interacting on that plane consciously. And we could say it's ruled by a level of karma and by a level of knowing what our motive is, even when we're not aware of what our motive is, which is a pretty amazing law if you think about it.
Is that what they're talking about? Men of the day who admit no invisible real nature?
What they're talking about basically there is science. Science in the old days, they were thinking more of the way our science works, although, they're trying to change in certain ways, and we could say they're trying to progress to the invisible nature, and that's what, particle accelerators and stuff are, but that's really not invisible nature, that's just super tiny nature. So that's what they're talking about. The men of science study what happens here and then make conjectures. And a lot of what they study is very accurate based on here, but not based on the internal laws of cause and effect, where the occultist is trying to understand the cause and then the effect will be known. I guess a good example of like an everyday saying is the road to hell is paved with good intention. Mm-hmm. You might want to do good, but because you don't really know all the particulars of the situation, your good intention and your compassionate heart motive is 3/4 of the key, but the other part is going to determine whether it works out or not. And sometimes, you know, it just doesn't work out. And that's not because you had a bad motive. It's because you didn't know the other forces operating in play. But still, you could say, well, then you shouldn't really do anything that you don't, even if it's compassion, you shouldn't do it. No, because then you're not really going to gain understanding of how to apply your compassion. And so, like everything, we have to start somewhere and try and develop that art of nature. And as I was talking before, like with the example of the scientist trying to solve the problem of the Hubble mirror, he had all the scientific knowledge. And his mind worked in a way beyond most of our minds, but it was in a very focused area. Still, he couldn't solve the problem, but he was smart enough to recognize a solution in a very abstract presentation. You know, a solution of a dream with a shower head with a mirror on the end. And he was smart enough to make the connection and distract from the rest of the dream all the storyline and the plot of the movie, and focus on the solution to his problem.
Well, there is what sometimes is written as the law, I don't know if it's a law, but the law of affinity. So I think based on going along with nature, because he's calling this book about when nature opens its doors. And so what nature? And then you spoke of our, you know, a different nature. We can say a higher nature, because as human beings, we're dual. We have that higher nature, spiritual nature, we might say, and the nature on which we live and think and act, which is the body, you know, body desire, the energy, and my thinking based on desire. And so therefore, as the student goes along learning all of these parts of occultism, then you begin to open up certain areas which naturally come to you by affinity. By affinity, you can reject certain things. But then let's say you were speaking of intention. So if you begin to open up and change your nature, your lower nature, into a better nature, let's say, and you begin to be receptive to certain forces or energies, I think that's where you make a decision, which way are you gonna go? I'm gonna use this for my own benefits, or I'm gonna use this to try and maybe it's useful for everybody else and everything else, you know. So I think the idea of affinity has a lot to do with what we attract and what we repel. So even like the dreamer, you know, when you are focusing to some thing, work, idea, or whatever it is, study, then those ideas, some answers will come to you during the day or even in a dream form, and just to you because you are focused on that. And by affinity, you are attracting all of those things in a way. And so I think the idea of the student is that to prepare himself to understand what are the really laws of nature and how are they related to me, to this body, to this mind, to my desires, because they're not separate, you know. So the idea of being of service, it has to do with learning and letting some things go, not to be so identified with things, and therefore you can have I think a freer way to get more ideas. But it depends on each one, you know, how dedicated you are to the study and to maybe the benefit of others, because the declaration, the first object is to perform a nucleus of brotherhood. So I think that's, for anyone to decide.
Ava has something. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just tagging along with Roberto that the ethical aspect is so important because when the motivation is of an ethical character, that unity of the mind, I suppose, attracts more of universal ideas that can be useful for everyone. So the ethical aspect has a great metaphysical implication, it would seem.
Yeah, going along with that, I was going to ask too, in Theosophy, what do we consider? We've been talking about the ethical aspect, the brotherhood, unselfishness. What are like some of the other aspects of preparing our nature to be receptive to these things?
Baruch Spinoza, it says that God expresses itself in the nature. The nature is God and God is nature. Going along with it, I as a part of the nature, I have to know the law of the nature. For instance, we have centrifugal and centripetal forces. And some of these laws I have to understand how to apply on real life, on practical life, day by day. There are some things that I know, and that there are some things that I don't know anything. I'm gonna put an example. I was working with a friend in downtown. He has to take care of the plants, and I was helping him. And I was, one day he says, I don't know what's going on with these plants. The plants are dying. He says, do you put water on the plants? I said, yes. How many water and how many days? I put water every day. No, man, you are killing my plants. I didn't know because I was helping him. And I understood that is not the good intention, like you say. I have to know how to help. Right. Because they have a mission on the plants, and you have to put water like 2 or 3 days, not every day. Right. And you have to put it in the mission. And I was killing the plants.
Well, and on a global scale, we just throw money, millions and billions and trillions of dollars at things. And if they don't really have a plan or know how to help, you see what happens a lot of the time. It's just like you on paper, you look at some of this stuff and you're like, why can't $20 billion fix this? Because people don't know what to do with the $20 billion,
What was your question again?
Oh yeah, about what are the different aspects, we talked about just ethics in general, unselfishness as a part of a motive, but what are all the characteristics to change our nature to be receptive to these ideas, or to these, cult inspirations?
I think a lot of it is that the vidya right there, and trying to get to some point of consciousness on a different level.
I think we're constantly calibrating what is ethical, based on trial and error. Back to the plant example. It's like your intention is good, but maybe the science of it or the nature laws don't agree. So then there's this constant sort of like trying to understand nature or karma. They sound similar. So you can only guess or trial and error or develop your intuition and try to read into nature a little more, even with imagination. But I think the only way you could better do that is by sort of stop thinking that you are separate, not only from the bigger scheme of nature, but other human beings. So it's like, I feel like step one is you have to like look at your fellow person as if they were you. Like, how would you treat them?
Oh, go ahead, Ava.
I think also, self-study and meditation to try and understand how one's own mind works and how one can improve upon that. So if we study Patanjali, yoga, for instance, of course, or, in everyday life to try and how do we apply this high metaphysical teaching to everyday life? So it doesn't just become, an intellectual exercise, but it actually has a practical value. And I'm often thinking about that saying that ethics is applied metaphysics. It's like the two wings of a bird. You really need those two to kind of be able to move forward somehow.
Is there anybody, I know I hear that a lot, we read that a lot. Can anybody expound on that, ethics or applied metaphysics?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think, the study of metaphysics is occultism. And here, in a very basic way, he's saying that we're connected to all the planes of consciousness. So the first part is to try and think of, and another example or a starting point is, if we're all souls of many incarnations, we're not just a one-shot appearance, then that means we, as a soul, I have accumulated wisdom and understanding that this personality only has a very small taste, if any, of that knowledge and experience. It applies itself whenever it can, whenever my personality lets it through. Luis brought up the forces of nature, centrifugal and centrifugal. Most of our applying of any ideas are all outside. We think, so we do. I want, so I do. I need, so I do. And I use my mind to solve all those basic problems like, what do I need? How do I get? What should I do? But if we go to the opposite side and we try and quiet down that aspect of our mind, then there's a part of the mind that is that soul mind that's not even connected to everybody else per se. It is, but I'm not even aware of it yet. If you could just remember the lessons you've learned just from one life experience, you wouldn't make as many mistakes in this life. But the problem is, we don't really recognize when that memory is hitting on us. And that goes back to my discussion about the 3 jobs, and you should take one by something is telling you to take one, but it doesn't make logical sense. So you're deciding between the other 2. If we talk to artists, musicians, painters, writers, they always say, well, how, they come out with a hit or they make some really amazing movie. And they say, well, where'd that come from? You say, well, I was inspired. You're inspired. So you had some inspiration that came from within. And then your mind had to work it out. And that's just like daily stuff that we just kind of brush off. So Kelly's question, how do you get in tune with that part of your nature? Because once we can get in tune with that part of our nature, then that kind of loosens the web to opening up to connect to other people's inner nature. And then as Ava, mentioned about meditation and applied metaphysics is trying to apply what we read. We can understand that, yeah, there's 7 levels of existence. We have a body, we have an electromagnetic, energetic body, we have the life force that keeps it going, we have desires, we have a mind, and Theosophy says 2 aspects of mind. So then that mind is connected to the soul mind and the personal mind. Then we have universal consciousness of humanity and the spirit of everything. If we're on all those 7 planes, when we can quiet the lower planes, then the mind can then be receptive to information from the higher planes. And then the problem of that is remembering it. We can go out and have a really amazing meditation where you get yourself so calm that you don't hear the car ambulances, you don't hear the dogs barking, you don't hear your next door neighbor's TV, and it's kind of quiet, and your mind starts to focus, and then you forget about all your daily problems that you have and what you're going to do tomorrow and all that stuff, and you quiet that aspect. If you can just get to that place where you're basically listening to yourself, but it's a different aspect of the nature, then that's where that can come from. The problem is then you got to remember it and apply it. And that's the application part. So the scientist that had the wacky dream, he had a metaphysical prompting from somewhere, either his own inner nature, some other scientist working on the problem, but he was able to retain it and then apply it to his dilemma, and it solved our problem, and now we get great pictures from the Hubble telescope. And it sounds, on the one hand, it sounds like, oh man, that's a crazy, kooky story, but it's cool. What are the Dodgers doing for this season? You have to think about it and say, the world is a lot more magical than it seems to be. You just gotta kind of be open to seeing it. And so to me, that's, what applied metaphysics is. And like Kelly's question, how do we get into that? Part of it is just quieting down personality so we can see what else is there.
James made a really big, good comment. If I can find it. It's right there. James, what did you say? Oh, here it is. Sorry. Shadow work, pranayama, respectful observation of nature, and seeing yourself in every sentient being. Definitely like so we have the Quan Yin everywhere. I think it's a kind of a primer for all of this. Yeah.
I was wondering if I could add some things to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
First, I think it requires humility to be on a certain level in your heart. And then I think that it requires a wish, having an actual wish for something to appear, and then having the grace to receive it.
I like that. Humility, wish, and grace. Yeah.
The other day I was reflecting on the Four Noble Truths and working with people with AA groups. I have reflecting on that and working with people. What I found is that we suffer because we don't want responsibility. We don't want to be responsible for our actions. And this is created in us suffering. But it's not only to understand and know why suffering. It's to stop suffering, acting irresponsible with my action, and then we can do something. Because I'm working with hundreds of people every day. And when I talk with them, sometimes they say, no, this is impossible, I cannot do it, I cannot do this because this and this and that. And I say, okay, forget it. Forget what you have. Give me the problem to me. I am your sponsor, and say what you want to say to me about the problem. And then they say, oh no, you can do this and this. See, you know what is the answer.
Right.
The
That's
thing
good.
is, you don't want to be responsible.
Yeah.
And this is 99%. I know I'm suffering. 20, 15, 10 years on drug addiction or alcoholism. You know what is the problem. You know that you have a problem. And you know how to solve the problem. But you don't want to be responsible. And this is the key of this discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have the power to make the problem, you have the power to correct it. It's not easy, but that's the reality. That's really just a basic law of occultism. Otherwise, we're all being pushed around like chess pieces on a board. We're not being pushed around. We're making choices that we're moving ourselves on the board. So if we're in a spot that we don't like, move to a different spot, change your attitude, or start taking responsible action. Thing is, it's not going to be instantaneous. As soon as you make the responsible action, it's going to take a while for the results to show up. But you have to start somewhere.
You guys are making me think of the term dharma, which I didn't understand for a while. But it's like, once you get rid of your selfishness, you're no longer thinking like, oh, how am I gonna do this? You're like, how are we gonna do this? So you almost, like, your consciousness, instead of being this like selfish funnel, now becomes this open reverse funnel. It's like consciousness for this room. Like, we're in this room. How do we help this room progress forward? Right? Like, it's like opening up consciousness to this higher mind, and believing that you can be connected to this. It's like almost like incarnating and being like, why? What's my duty here? What's my purpose? Which is a very strong question, but like, it tends to not be selfish. So I feel like that's, when we're talking about applied metaphysics, it's kind of like saying, like, how do you read the consciousness of this room so you can best evolve it forward?
Do you feel like, you're like duty and purpose are the same? Isn't there a difference with duty? Sometimes? Is your duty your purpose, you know?
Right. So I think I'm questioning within myself, sort of like, these circumstances happen to me, so how do I fix them? But then I'm also asking, like, why did this happen to me in this body for me to learn and fix it? I guess it sounds like I'm saying the same thing, but I'm not.
It's karma.
There's no answer to that, I think, like, because it can't be dual. Like, it can't, me asking what is my purpose or my dharma, or what am I trying to understand about life, is the same as like, it could be a symbol for an oversoul creating manifestation and existence for asking that same question on a higher level that we can't explain with words. Like it's just like the dream thing with the, like, he was able to like unveil the dream to find that core sort of purpose or meaning. You know, but that was just a symbol. The range, the shower head was just a symbol for something in this. So like when you said it's magical over here, yeah, it's constantly magical. It's like we have to almost see life as a dream so we can like penetrate and see, like drop the veil and extract those ethics, which is applied metaphysics.
Yeah,
When I came here, I didn't know anything about Theosophy, nothing. I swear you. But little by little, I recognized that that the philosophy of Theosophy, it has one of the 100 on theory, but 99% is practice, is pragmatical. And I wanna read this to you. The work he has on hand and the end he keeps in view are too absorbing and too lovely to leave it the time or inclination to take part in the side issues. That work and that ends is the dissemination of the fundamental principle of philosophy, of Theosophy, and its exemplification and practice of those principles. For me, Theosophy is not a theory. Is like William Kia says, is the como decía, una
Life meditation.
life meditation. Is second to second, because life is too changing day by day, second to second, and you have to know how to apply those laws of nature on practice.
good.
You were asking about elementals, you brought up before.
Yeah, I was
So,
at,
you know, first, and, I don't know how much you've read about Theosophy, but it's, elementals are, we could say the fabric of nature. On the gross plane, our body's made up with cells. On the inner planes, there's electromagnetic nature. But all planes of consciousness, they're intelligent. We could say it's an intelligent field that is impregnated or records our thoughts and our intentions that we think about. And then
it's a karma.
it's a substance which karma uses and works through. And it's not invisible in the sense that if we were conscious on that plane, we'd be able to know and guide it. And that's how certain things on this plane perform. They have consciousness, but they're not self-conscious. So they work by attraction. And they're attracted by our thoughts and our desires, our feelings, our intentions. And so HPV gives different, and Judge himself, he talks about their nature and in some examples. So I'm going to read one, and then from that we can kind of get an idea about, how does karma work? Or he's bringing up the idea, like, what is my dharma? And then how does that play out? It's all, everything that we think about, only a small portion of it happens here, because it needs time on this plane to happen. So it might happen within this personal lifetime in a matter of an hour or so, or it might happen 10 years from now, or it might happen in a different life when the circumstances are correct for me to learn the lesson of the mistake that I'm creating right now. So you could say, what is your dharma? All of us, we have a certain desire of what we want to do in life. And we start pursuing that, and then life happens. And it brings in all the aspects of karma, our interconnections with people. And it might take us in a really focused path, but we're still going to deal with all that, or it might take us up all different detours. And we can say how that happens, the elementals are the forces of nature that kind of bring that together. So this is an unusual question statement, but it kind of gives in a story form an idea about the workings of elementals.
Is it in Conversations?
It's in it's in Conversations, laws governing elementals.
Oh.
And in this, it's in the 2, 3, 4. It's like on the 5th page of that pamphlet. And it's talking about buried treasure. So we're all looking for buried treasure. Not really, but it gives you how elementals work. So the student says, but take the case of a man who, being in possession of treasure, hides it in the earth and goes away and dies, and it is not found. In that instance, the elementals did not hide it. Or when a miser buries his gold or jewels, how about these? So there's intention in both of those cases. In all cases where a man buries gold or jewels or money or precious things, his desires are fastened to that which he hides. Many of his elementals attach themselves to it, and other classes of them also, who had nothing to do with him, gather round and keep it hidden. In the case of the captain of a ship containing a treasure, the influences are very powerful because there are elementals and are gathered from all the persons connected with the treasure, and the officer himself is full of solicitude for what is committed to his charge. You should also remember that gold and silver, or metals, have relations with elementals that are among the strongest and peculiar in character. They do not work for human law, and natural law does not assign any property to metals to man, nor recognizes him in any particular and transcendent right to retain what he has dug from the earth or acquired to himself. Hence, we do not find the elementals anxious to restore him the gold or silver which he had lost. If we were to assume that they occupied themselves in catering to the desires of men or in establishing what we call our rights over property, we might as well at once grant the existence of a capricious and irresponsible providence. They proceed solely according to the law of their being, and as they are without the power of making a judgment, they commit no blunders and are not to be moved by considerations based upon our vested rights or our unsatisfied wishes. Therefore, the spirits appertain to metals invariably act as the laws of their nature prescribe, and one way of doing so is to obscure the metals from our sight. So here he's pointing out some pretty interesting, at least to me, some pretty interesting ways of looking at it. We know that science studies all kinds of elements, and they know that certain elements will combine with other elements, and they know that certain elements won't combine with other elements under any process. You know, sometimes the process involves extreme heating. Sometimes the process involves a third element as a catalyst to make the two join. And so those are physical laws that the scientists have already discovered. And by studying those laws, they know how to make metals that are super strong or super conductive or pliable, but not breakable.
Weigh nothing.
Weigh nothing. They know like how much metal it takes to support a beam, a bridge, and how many beams. So they, on this plane, they've discovered and applied their discoveries in amazing ways. When you think of all the mechanics and stuff that goes in. But now here he's explaining some other laws that are more metaphysical in nature, that the metal has no regard to who possesses it. It's not like, well, that was my gold, I buried that 10 years ago. That gold is the Earth's gold.
Gold doesn't get it.
You know, those jewels were in the ground first, and the jewels are the Earth's jewels. Now, if you happen to dig them up, then you might have them for a while. And so the laws that he's talking about are more in harmony with what we know from native people wherever, in any country. You know, it's not just Native Americans. If we go to any country, the people that were from that country know a lot of these natural laws, and they try and work with them. Where we operate from a standpoint of we're going to control how the world works. A lot of original peoples, their way of looking at it is we need to understand how the harmony works and what our place is in. They're taking a position more like Chris is talking about. So if they're going to graze animals, they're going to move to the land that's grazable. They're not going to corral in a certain area and then bring in all the food to them. And so it's just a different way of looking at it.
I have one question. What is that symbolism of Aladdin's wonderful lamp?
The symbol of Aladdin.
Because they say in the page 23 here, they say, okay, I'm going to try to read.
It's very related to elemental.
Yeah, they say they have but to no command the very elemental control it. And they have it. This is the basic for the story of Aladdin's wonderful lamp, more than did you believe. So is that symbolism about that one? I was thinking that Aladdin was only history, but this one they say, no.
It's almost biblical. It's from Solomon, and yeah, Solomon had control over the jinn. He could control them out. They were his dominion, and the jinn are elementals, or elementaries, or conglomerates of element. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good symbol for what we're talking about. But it's not just a kid's story. And like a lot of kids' stories and nursery rhymes and things like that, they have pretty heavy origins. Sure, go ahead.
I was just thinking where you were reading from, Colin, in the book on 410. The next question, I think, addresses very well what Kelly brought up some time ago with a practical aspect of our knowledge. Do you want me to read it, or?
Yeah, read it. Good.
The student says, can you make any application of all this in the realm of ethics? And the sage says, there is a very important thing you should not overlook. Every time you harshly and unmercifully criticize the fault of another, you produce an attraction to yourself of certain quantities of elementals from that person. They fasten themselves upon you and endeavor to find in you a similar state or spot or fault that they have left in the other person. It is as if they left him to serve you at higher wages, so to say. Then there is that which I referred to in the preceding conversation about the effect of our acts and thoughts upon not only the portion of the astral light belonging to each of us with its elementals, but upon the whole astral world. If men saw the dreadful pictures imprinted there and constantly throwing down upon us their suggestions to repeat the same acts or thoughts, a millennium might soon draw near. The astral light is, in this sense, the same as the photographer's negative plate, and we are the sensitive paper underneath on which is being printed the picture. We can see two sorts of pictures for each act. One is the act itself, and the other is the picture of the thoughts and feelings animating those engaged in it. You can therefore see that you may be responsible for many more dreadful pictures than you had supposed. For actions of a simple outward appearance have behind them very often the worst of thoughts or desires. But especially the first part, when we are critical towards someone else, that we're actually inviting those elementals into ourselves, has a very practical application, isn't it?
Makes a lot of sense psychologically. Yeah.
You're almost letting your thought populate your consciousness. Yeah. Oh. You know, like something interesting on that note, I've noticed that when I go on runs, I'll do long distance running. Halfway through the run, so these runs are like 3 to 6 miles. Halfway through the run, I start almost like thinking of like, yeah, something that happened at work or with someone that's like a negative thing. Like going back to this first thing where it's like, I don't know if I'm like purging or cleansing, but like it comes into my mind. And now I'm getting in the habit of being like, okay, don't dwell on it, just let it go. But this is new. Like for a while, it's like I would dwell on it on this run and be like, why am I thinking about this person? And it would happen every single time. So what's up with that?
What I think with what Eva just read is also that when you are attracting these elementals, you know, because you have that nature, it's like you've seen yourself in the other person, then every time you think about it, you're nurturing those elementals. So like you said, maybe I should just let them go, you know, they're gonna come naturally to you because you work, you did the work to attract them. So they're gonna come back to you when you think about it. So I think, you know, the idea is that, I think you said it, just let them go. They're gonna come to you, but don't dwell on whatever, on the word you said or the acts, you know, you did or whatever happened between, you know, you in that situation, you know, person or job. And because then we keep nurturing those elementals and they're gonna follow us. So I think it's up to us. If we started them to follow us, now we have to know how to stop them
But
and not nurturing them.
But karmically, why is it that like it's harder for groups of people? Like it's so easy for someone, like some people have it way harder because of the situation and the neighborhood and the whatever they're dealing with. So it's like they can't get out of that. They have to, it's even extra harder, like to dissolve those elementals. But I guess it doesn't matter. I guess it's karma.
Oh, no, yeah, that's my name.
No, it all matters. I guess the thing is if the ideas are coming to you, you instead of dwelling on like why it's aggravating you, just try and observe the situation more objectively, just like watch it like you're watching a movie, and then see that solution to the problem might present itself to you. When people run, there's a certain, it's a certain type of meditation. Sure. Because your body gets into a rhythm and your breathing is into a rhythm. And you're paying attention where you're going, but your focus is really get out and get this run done. You know, maybe you do it to relax, maybe you're doing it for exercise, maybe you're just doing it because you like to run. But if something repetitive comes up, now you have an opportunity to observe it and see if it's something that you should let go and then it won't return, or if it's something that the solution to why there's a unharmonious situation might present itself. So in a sense, a run is a type of meditation. You know, some people it's a swim, some people get out and they're surfing in the ocean. It's a type of meditation. It's a way for them to get out of their element, but at the same time, your body is going through similar things of a meditation in the sense that it's rhythmic. You're breathing at a different pace, so everything is kind of gets into a very repetitive rhythm. And then, then you're the only one that can determine is this something that you have to let go, or is this something that keeps presenting itself because you haven't solved it? And that's everybody is in those situations.
Right. I think Alex in the Sunday morning class talks about when you go and clean out the basement, all the spiders come out.
Yeah.
But also, I think, that brings up another point of like Louis talking about responsibility, and then we're also talking about we do have the choice. You talked about people that are in difficult areas with a lot of negative things happening. But we do, instead of being the victim of that, we have the choice and the ability to change our thinking and think of like how, okay, are we going to just always react to that negativity that's coming, or do we change our minds and like do meditations or daily meditations to like try to promote a harmonious atmosphere in that area, promote a harmonious atmosphere that might, change those elementals. We don't know if it's going to happen, like Colin said, like the next, day or 10 years, but it's better. It's, I think, a better alternative, and we're not just being the victims, a better alternative than just always like reacting to the negative. In a large city, we have a lot of that. So do we just react and like, this is like frustrating, or do we change our mind and like think of trying to promote more harmony in the situation?
It's good.
I just want to say something really quick. It's really hard to change without remorse of conscience. So there has to be that presence of the three bodies present so that we can see it. And then when we are present like that and we have that vision that there is something that can do there is something that can change it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that remorse of conscience is it goes deep into the emotions and really can cleanse those things, those vices.
Yeah, thank you. Ava?
Well, also, like what you were pointing out, Kelly, the fact that we have a choice, for example, if we have a tendency to be critical towards a certain person, maybe we could try in those instances, catch ourselves and maybe try to shift the focus to what is good in that person. Because everyone has its good qualities. Maybe we can focus and thereby maybe even, you could say, give that element or those elementals a little bit different imprint, maybe.
Yeah, I think, that's, good. I've thought about the statement of, seeing the Buddha in everyone. And I think it's not just trying to see the good in everyone, but when you do project that kind of thought process, then I think you're influencing the elementals to maybe bring out the best in that person that's possible.
I think the most apparent example, it's kind of a dumb example for me, but what makes this really obvious to me and why that makes so much sense, what you read about the attracting of the elementals, especially when you look at someone critically, when you criticize pettiness in somebody, man, that's petty. you just become that. Like that, it's a really petty thing to do that anyway. So yeah, I get frustrated with that sometimes when I find, and then I'm just like, what am I doing? This is such a small thing that's obsessing me. And yeah, sometimes just recognizing the nature of it, you can just be like, oh, that's what that is. Bye. Like once you can finally understand it, it's a little easier to just let go.
Yeah, and that letting go is a forgiveness. That's what I meant by remorse of conscience.
Mm.
Will the freedom come to us, and it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Chris mentioned that others that has it or have it a lot more difficult than us maybe, or than other people. But yeah, I mean, we're just talking right now about this type of elementals that we are sort of like attracting ourselves based on what we think or say to others. But Luis knows, what about the elementals that we attract when we become, alcoholic or use drugs? And it's very hard. I wouldn't wish to be in their, shoes, but I can imagine it's very difficult. I think the solution is the same, but it is a lot more difficult for them because you're attracting a different type of elementals. And because how it was mentioned, you've been feeling certain thoughts and ideas for many years or maybe lives. Because when this comes up today, it's not only because of this new thinking or way that I identify with the person in this thinking, but maybe I'm bringing stuff from my past life too. So I can just imagine, having this difficulty of overcoming, drugs or alcohol or any other obsession that we have. I mean, there's many other obsessions, not only drugs and alcohol. The obsession, even even philosophy can be an obsession. So I think some have it very difficult. But again, I think we're speaking this kind of solution. I think it applies to anything and anybody. Maybe in a different or stronger effort or work on it. But again, it's hard to tell because even he said that before we are born, in this part of ourselves, the higher ego knows exactly what are we getting into. So some people might even get into that for an experience. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, you give us a lot of suggestions. For instance, you say that it's better to have active mind than passive mind. The other day I was watching my Facebook, and I was looking there, for 2-3 hours, and I said, it's better to have an active mind than passive mind. 3 hours.
That's a lot of air.
So intelligent I am.
Yeah.
You when you submit yourself to the media, it's easy to get in, and it's hard to get out of it. But you have to review it second to second. Say, hey, what I'm doing in my life.
I have a question that I feel like Judge probably answers somewhere, but as when we pass through Devachan, when we're reincarnated, are the elementals like sloughed off? Are we cleansed of those, or do elementals attachments follow us through lives? Is that part of like bad karma, good karma, because we're literally showing up with these elementals from a past existence?
So I think, you have to think about if they're on all planes. So your mind is recorded with elementals. Your spiritual nature is impressed on elementals. So when a soul, I mean, there's a whole process that Theosophy talks about when you die. The first process, your physical body dies. Your electromagnetic body will hang around the physical body until it loses its energy. But those elementals will all be waiting for you when you come back. You know, our desires and our nature is impressed on the plane of nature. Our lower mind is impressed on nature. So all those kingdoms, eventually the soul detaches from it and it goes into Devachan that you mentioned, or, you know, would correspond to maybe to heaven that Christians think. And we there assimilate all the aspects of our higher nature. And things happen, like we have good intentions that don't happen. So the personal aspect of the soul, of the personality that just dies, is going to see those played out in Devachan. So that is heaven, in a sense. It's not exactly the same as Christian heaven, but in a sense, it's similar in that everything plays out and it's our highest nature.
Seems like that, our idea of Devachan is like where it's different from heaven. It seems like it's this recalibration. You die, recalibrate to your higher self, kind of get rid of some things and come back. Like it's not so much this reward as much.
No, it's like you're learning, you're assimilating the lessons of the previous life. It's still an illusion because it's not reality. It's your personal reality and the higher nature of that personality. But when we come back, those tendencies are waiting for us. But they can only express, we don't get the exact same ones from the life we just lived. It depends on, karmically, when we come back, is to our circumstances and the family we're born into. So we might get some, and we might get some from 10 lives ago and some from...
Yeah, that's that family karma and family elementals. Oh man.
It's interesting when you read, like the Judge has all the aphorisms on karma, and it gives a lot of indications as to why certain things happen under certain circumstances. But there's a really good aphorism that says karma can only meet you where you are. So you have a certain amount of karma that you experience because of the situation that you're in. Now you change your situation, you're still in the same personality, but when you're in a different situation, different friends, a different country, different job, you're gonna interact with some of your same elementals, and it's gonna open up a door for other elementals. That's why, like Luis working with people in AA, they've developed a really big cloud of elementals this life that is addiction, whether they had addiction issues or in a previous life or not. Once they make the decision to try and get out of addiction, those are still going with it. Mm-hmm. And you have to fight those tendencies. But if you're in a different situation with different people presenting to you opportunities of how you can change your life, now you're going to start going down that road, and some of those elementals are no longer going to be attached to you because you're not following addiction tendencies. And it's not just the physical addiction. There's a mental aspect of addiction.
Huge.
And it's not just the emotional attachment and all the, the selfishness and all the regret. All those are another level of elementals that are following you, but as you're not re-energizing them, they start to fade away. Mm-hmm. And that's, sometimes people are clean for 3 years and then they fall back. Sometimes people are clean for 30 years and they never go back. Or someone's clean for 3 years and someone's clean for 20 years and all of a sudden they go back. There's certain tendencies, but as you can change those tendencies and your mind, then you're not re-energizing. And that goes for everything else. It's not just addiction.
There is a metaphysical thing at play. Like, I'm thinking of a room filled with gas and you light a match. light, right, fire. Cause I feel like I've been in situations where it's like the worst of the worst of the worst. But like, it's like I have this cloak, just walking through it unaffected. Like, it seems like if you change something in your mind, you can totally draw out elemental or just wipe them off.
You're just walking on water, yeah.
You like wipe them off. Like, you literally light a match in the gas. Or something. It's like that you can change the polarity, I guess.
Well, it's interesting. Is there a state of like meditation or even occult practice where you can even have like an instant of complete freedom from elemental? Like,
Right, there must be, right? Like, I feel like the rule for an elemental is that they have to have a negative or a positive charge, and you can change it.
Yeah, but you're not instantaneously changing your charge permanently.
Okay.
That's the thing. You're not instantaneously changing so that I'm gonna be a good person and all your tendencies drop away.
right, it's not just a decision.
No, no, because
That'd be nice.
they're already gonna be telling you, no, you don't wanna change your mind. I mean, how many people have kept their New Year's resolution?
But what about people that like quit cold turkey?
No, doesn't happen like that. Working.
It's very, you could.
I mean, even people that
I-
quit cold turkey
okay,
successfully, like there's a lot of other components to that. It's not just.
Some people do, but it's a rare thing. And you can actually, yeah, if you do it, but there's still gonna be the presentation to you where, you know, I'll make someone's wedding. It's just this once. Oh, you know, I got a new job. Oh, I'm getting married. Everyone has a different, you know, and it might just be that once. Might say, you know, I'm just gonna have this one drink and you do. But it's rare, right? Yeah, it's rare.
I took it on archaeology. And I swear you, I went into the stores and I couldn't get out without taking things, stealing things.
Should laugh, man.
I didn't know how to do it.
You got my fault?
It's a big.
And,
I've known people like that. Like, I'm just like, what are you doing?
I grateful with Lily because I was talking with her. And I say, Lily, I don't know how to stop this. She says, you think you are doing this to the society, but you are doing it against you. When I found out that, and I knew that I was doing the bad thing to me, to myself, I said, no way, I cannot continue with this.
It's like, it's why waging a war, even a righteous war, is so destructive. It's just, I mean, you do, like trying to just fight white knuckle things and like just pure willpower or righteous anger. It's going to attract more anger, more aggression, more like definitely. And like, I think that's a big addiction with elementals is just anger and the power or the energy that you can feel by getting really mad or enraged. And then that just, yeah, that one can really stay. Anger is a tough one when they really start coming.
Does anybody remember that phrase about old wine new wine in old?
In an old, new wine in an old barrel.
Right.
So it's gonna pick up.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Like a sardine wooden barrel.
Maple
And you wanna put your
aged.
wine into, which means that's it, how hard it is to clean up our nature to the elementals, and how If even if you put new wine, you're still attracting all the elementals, they're not gonna go away that easily. In rare cases, yeah, but I think that's the work we have to do, there's no other way. We work on creating them, you know, we almost love them, I mean, we love the things we do, even though it's not a good thing to do, but we love it, so that's what it's like, almost the battle of Arjuna, you know, killing his own relatives, his own relatives, you know. It's like you're in the battle and then you say, I don't wanna really kill them. You know, I love them, they're my own, so it's that difficult to change these elementals. You wanna say something about that, Beryl?
No, I was gonna read since.
Oh, Ava's got a comment real quick.
Okay, well, we may want to remind ourselves what Mr. Judge says, that if we are only able to change one deep-rooted habit that we don't really want to have any longer in this incarnation, then that incarnation has been a success. That's how tough it is to change things. Huh?
So that's your dharma.
Can you say it again? Can you say it again, Ava?
Well, Mr. Judge says that if we can only change one deep-rooted habit that we wouldn't like to have any longer in this lifetime, then our incarnation has been a success.
It's so great.
And also I think so when we fight, we give it the energy with the element. That's in my point of view. But if we know fighting about, and we say like a person, okay, I know you are a system, but you stay away from me. It's like a no fight at all. It seems so it's a good point, because when something happens in one part of view, we think it's negative, but we can use it that one, like a Hercules, like they say the Hercules, yes, he fight over the lions, I don't know what is the name of the lion. Well, after he killed the lion, they put a skin. They put a skin, so we use it that one. We have the power. Today we're talking about the potential. We can use it that one. It's a natural in us. But the only thing we have to put it actual. Actual? Yeah, that one. Yes, because if I find is, for example, with anything. For example, I was a smoke before. I quit, but I quit right away when I feel this is the last one. But when I smell, okay, that is, I say to myself, okay, be quiet, listen yourself, because it's easy, like you explained, it's easy to doing again, but we have to control, but without fight. For me, it's without fighting, because my son-in-law say, how you did? Okay, only relax it, will be happy, but be aware will be happy, but don't fight. That's, for me, was healthy, no fight.
It's almost like fighting the elementals teaches them how to fight. It's
They give me more
you're
power.
putting this on them, yeah. Yet another reading?
Well, it goes to your question, because this is in the article, Laws on Occultism. And before this, he's talking about the books Zanoni. But anyway, it says, one of these rules may correspond to thou shalt not steal, rule on occultism. That one, which was long ago expressed by the ancient sage in the words, do not covet the wealth of any creature. This is better than thou shalt not steal, for you cannot steal unless you covet. If you steal for hunger, you may be forgiven. But if you covet the food for a purpose, other than as others covet merely for the sake of possession, the wealth of others includes all their possessions and does not mean mere money alone. Their ideas, their private thoughts, their mental forces, powers, and faculties, their psychic powers, all indeed, on all planes that they own or have, while they in that realm are willing to give it all away, it must not be coveted by another. You have no right, therefore, to enter into the mind of another who has not given the permission and take from him what is not yours. You become a burglar on the mental and psychic plane when you break this rule. You are forbidden taking anything for personal gain, profit, advantage, or use. But you may take what is for general good if you are far enough advanced and good enough to be able to extricate it from the personal element from it. This rule, you can see, cut off all those who are well known to every observer who want psychic powers for themselves and for their own use. If such persons had those powers of inner sight and inner hearing that they so much want, no power could prevent them from continuing their theft on unseen planes wherever they meet a nature that was not protected. And as most of us are far from perfect so far, indeed we must work for many lives, yet the masters of wisdom do not aid our defective natures in the getting of weapons that would cut our own hands. For the law acts implacably, and the breaches made would find their end and result long years after. The Black Lodge, however, is very willing to let any poor, weak, or sinful mortal get such power because that would swell their number of victims they so much require. So
Here goes on the Black Lodge, huh?
here it's pointing out that that there's, people, a lot of times people say, well, what is preventing me from being able to see on the psychic plane? What is preventing us is like, it's like saying, well, what is preventing you from reading your friend's diary? If you read your friend's diary, if they give you a diary and they say, oh, this is what I've been writing for the past 10 years. I'm thinking about writing a book. Here, you read it, let me know what you think. Then it's open. They've given you permission to read what they've written as personal thoughts and experiences. But it's saying that on the plane of mind, there's certain things that are, when you see on that plane, there's certain things that are identifiable as private. And you can have the thoughts of all that person except the private thoughts. And it's kind of an unusual thing, because most of the things that we think are private, we put in a special box, or we put it in a safe, or put it where someone can't see it. But it's saying on the plane of mind, we all participate in it. And what's keeping us from participating in there more actively is our own nature and our own desire to not be open. We see in nature that animals have a group mind, and they operate in a group mind, whether it's a herd of cattle, whether it's birds, a school of fish. When you observe it, they're going in a certain direction, all of a sudden the whole thing turns. We have a hard time with traffic signals on our freeway.
Four-way stop.
Four-way stops. So but we're connected anyway. We just don't have access to it because of our own, I guess, ethical development. And as that changes, then we'll have more access to it. And we'll be able to not look and observe the aspects of mind of other people that they want still private. And I think that's the way that they explain it is so interesting, because it opens up one little statement about the laws, opens up your mind to think about all the implications of that thought and how it plays out. And how I can work in harmony with it as opposed to how can I get around it. You know, on this plane, you have laws that you have, then you hire lawyers to get you out of the laws that you break. There's no lawyers on that.
No lawyers.
We either do or we don't.
One part of the book, they say about the good karma and the good element. They say in the beginning was a good element, but only the men change, like a selfish, everything, the elemental change also. So that's what they give me some hint about how is the elemental work. It depends how is that humanity. So that's
And it goes back to, you know, a couple weeks ago, we were talking, when you were talking, and Chris brought up the idea between the Akashic plane. And the difference between the Akashic plane and the astral life we can think of as the clouds between true nature and truth and personal man on earth. And in between is all the thoughts of humanity is in the astral life. And trying to filter through is the Akashic information that under the right circumstance we can tap into. But it has to get through basically the sludge of human action and thinking of the astral life.
It's almost like television. Yeah. Cool. Does anybody online have anything else? All right.
So next week.
Next week?
Yeah, so we segued to next week we'll delve deeper into spiritual ethics.
Please.
Spiritual ethics.
All right. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great meeting.
Bye. Bye.
Hi.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone.
Morning, Ava.
Bye. Thank you.
From which book? From which book? For the next week?
From which book? No books, not anything really. I'm just gonna, like,